Wireless history began with Hertz, and then along comes Marconi in 1897. Marconi started the wireless telegraph company and set proprietary closed standards. The wireless company founded by Marconi actually had a set of standards in which they used radios that were built only by the Marconi company. They used operators that were only hired by the Marconi company, and they leased the operator and the radio so you could send messages back and forth, but only using their standard radio and their operator. Marconi demonstrated in 1901 that you could send messages even across the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. Navy and navies of different countries were intrigued by this capability. They were the greatest promoters of wireless telecommunications in the earliest 20th century. The first demonstration to the public of the power of wireless came in 1912, when the Titanic had a problem. It hit an iceberg. The Titanic sent out a radio message, and at least some of the people were saved because there was wireless. Now that happened to be a proprietary wireless standard they were using. The operator on the Titanic was a Marconi operator, using Marconi equipment that was leased to the White Star Line. Consumer-based radio broadcasting took off in the 1920s, and there were originally different sets of equipment that were made that did not follow open standards. But very early on, it became clear that if you're using proprietary standards, you have to have broadcast stations match receiving stations. So it wasn't very long before open standards showed up in public broadcasting. Much the same development took place in private telecommunications. Let's jump far ahead almost to today and the introduction of 0G. You're probably using a 3G or 4G telephone now. 0G was the first of the telephones that were mobile, land mobile telephones. If you wanted to engage in communications on the fly, you used 0G. Since going from analog to digital, a new standard's been adopted. We found out that we could pack more signals into a given amount of spectrum, and we could get much better quality of transmission if we did it digitally. In other words, you really didn't lose the transmissions as often, and the voice quality was better if you went to digital transmission. So the 2G standards were the beginning of transmitting back and forth in a digital way. 2G was a whole new set of standards. 3G is not really a world standard. 3G is adopted by most countries. It's adopted here in the United States, and it was the most ubiquitous form of cell communications here in the United States for a time. But it wasn't long before we came up with 4G. 4G was a big step forward because it not only was it digital, but now it included mobile broadband access. Now your phone isn't just a phone. You can't just send voice and text messages. Now everything that's available on the internet is available through your smartphone. 4G is actually a set of standards. The most popular is 4G LTE. That's long-term evolution. And the version that's become the most popular is LTE, but there's a competing version, WiMAX. Not all 3G and 4G equipment is perfectly compatible, as it's not a single standard. It's actually a number of different standards that comprise 3G and 4G. So the questions we've been trying to answer this week is, first of all, who benefits from wireless standards? Who sets the wireless standards? And what are the best kinds of wireless standards? The most important question clearly is, who benefits from the wireless standards? And I think the answer is very clear to economists. It's consumers that benefit most from wireless standards. Consumers benefit from standards in almost every area, but all the more from wireless standards. And it's also clear that the standards that are open and competing provide the best opportunity to make consumers better off. The widespread use of Wi-Fi and its use of open standards and unregulated spectrum is the best argument for open and competing standards in a wireless world.